Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this lecture on cloud economics, we'll look at all of the tools that are available to present a business case for using the AWS cloud. We'll start off by talking about the 6 advantages that AWS define of cloud computing. Then we'll talk about the AWS pricing calculator, which allows you to estimate the costs on a monthly and yearly basis of using AWS services. Then we'll look at the total cost of ownership, or TCO, and the tools that are available to allow us to look further into other areas of cost, such as overheads, including labor, electricity, and the like. And they can help us to accurately assess the benefits of AWS as opposed to using our own on-premises servers. We'll look at the Amazon Inspector, which is an expert system which allows us to look into our existing infrastructure and identify areas of opportunity and areas of risk. Then we'll look at compliance and all of the tools and resources that are available to help our business to remain compliant with a number of different industry standards. And finally, we'll look at all of the available support options for us when we're using the AWS cloud. AWS defines 6 advantages of cloud computing. The first one there is that we're going to be trading a capital expense for a variable expense. So in the past, we would have had to put forward a capital expenditure request to management to purchase these servers, to have them installed, to have them maintained, all of that sort of thing. And then by the time we've gone through that process, we may have to go back and redo that all again because we've run out of capacity already. And this way, we're going to be swapping that for a variable expense that is going to be able to react according to our business needs. Next, we're going to benefit from the massive economies of scale of using this enormous AWS cloud. And those costs that are associated with that AWS cloud are shared amongst millions of users. And so we're not going to be getting a big variation in these costs. It's going to be quite stable over the long term. Next, we can stop guessing capacity. We're going to have an elastic infrastructure that can vary according to our needs. We don't need to guess our capacity to purchase fixed assets. We are going to be using a service that is going to be able to accommodate our needs into the future. Next, we're going to be increasing our speed and agility to get our services and products to market quickly. We can launch an infrastructure on AWS within minutes, and we can be up and running in a very short amount of time. Next, we're going to stop spending money on running and maintaining our data centers on premises. This is a big one because there are a lot of overhead costs that we may not take into consideration when we're implementing an on-premises solution. And that could be anything from insurance costs to security costs as far as physical security. It could be electricity, a whole heap of things that go into maintaining and running that data center. And finally, we can go global in minutes. The AWS cloud has data centers across the globe, and we can launch within any part of the globe within a very short amount of time. The AWS pricing calculator allows us to estimate the monthly and annual costs of using individual AWS services. Now, please note, this was formerly called the Simple Monthly Calculator. So any references to the Simple Monthly Calculator simply means the AWS pricing calculator. If you want to have a hands-on look at the AWS pricing calculator, and I recommend you do that, just go to calculator.aws. The first step after opening up the pricing calculator is that we need to select the service that we're going to be using. And there are a number of services there available. Pretty well the vast range of services that you can get on AWS will be available here on the pricing calculator. After we've selected our service, and we can see here we've got the EC2 service up, we can start to define what we're going to be using on that EC2 service. So we can define what the instance type is, what the operating system is, and that sort of thing. We've also got the option there of an advanced estimate, and that's going to allow us to put more information. For example, there we can see that we can put in the workload. So it's going to be constant usage or whether we're going to have spikes in demand and that sort of thing. And so we can base our estimate on a schedule or on a consistent usage, whatever that may be. And once we've put in all of our information about that service, we'll get our estimate. And we can see here, we've got the first 12 months is going to cost us $1,500 US. We're going to have a total upfront expenditure there and a monthly cost. So we can save that and we can share it with other people. We can export it to Microsoft Excel as a CSV file if we like. And so that is a very quick and easy way. If we know what services we're going to be using and how we're going to use them, it's a great way to get a good estimate of what our ongoing costs are going to be. The AWS Total Cost of Ownership, or TCO for short, the AWS TCO calculator allows us to compare the costs of running our applications in an on-premises environment or a co-location environment as opposed to running it on the AWS cloud. And it is very good at identifying those costs that are hidden within overheads, that are hidden within IT labor and all these sorts of costs that you may not be aware of. Now, one thing that I need to make you aware of is that the TCO calculator has been around for many years and it hasn't changed much over those years other than some user interface changes. And it really doesn't do a lot different to what it did many years ago. And that is, it looks at the costs of on-premises as opposed to using the AWS EC2 service. It does not take into consideration other opportunities such as serverless or using, for example, CloudFront to front your infrastructure as well. It purely looks at the EC2 service and the costs involved in using that as compared to using an on-premises environment. But that said, you need to understand this whole concept of TCO and why it's important to not ignore those overhead costs and those IT labor costs that go into a solution on AWS or on premises as opposed to on AWS. Okay, so the total cost of ownership is made up of 4 main cost centers there, being server, storage, network, and IT labor costs. Now, the server costs, that could consist of hardware, such as the servers, racks, all of that sort of thing, and also the software that is running on that server. So we may require maintenance, it may require licensing and that sort of thing. We have storage there, and not only do we have the hardware that is involved with that storage, but we also have administration of that. So that needs to be backed up. We may have compliance costs with that storage as well. The network costs, again, that's going to have LAN switches and load balancers and all of that sort of hardware, but it's also going to require administration costs as well, monitoring of that network and all of those associated costs. And then the fourth one there is the IT labor costs. So we need to have administration staff that is going to be looking after our service, and they need to have training in virtualization and all of that sort of thing. We also need to have specific accounting resources as well to keep track of costs as well. Now, within the first 3 there of server, storage, and network, we also have overhead costs that we need to take into consideration. We have the space that is required to store this hardware and to make sure that that is clean, and we're going to have costs involved in that. There's going to be rent. So that is a overhead cost that we need to take into consideration. There is need to be power to these servers and storage, and there also needs to be cooling to keep this hardware cool as well. So all of those overhead costs need to be taken into consideration and not ignored. After we have entered in the details of our on-premise environment, and that will include the number of virtual machines, the CPUs and that sort of thing, and also the storage that we're going to be requiring, we can produce a report like this, which will be a TCO report that will compare on-premises versus the AWS cloud and the cost savings of doing that. And it'll also look at the breakdown of those costs. To get a more detailed assessment, what we can do is that we can modify those assumptions that are made by AWS. So AWS will have a standard set of labor costs, electricity costs, network costs, and all that sort of thing. We can go in there and we can modify those to specifically what our on-premises costs are, and we can get an even more accurate model. So again, take that into consideration. Don't just use the AWS metrics, use your own labor costs and network costs and that sort of thing as well to make it more accurate. Another great way of reducing those costs of IT labor and resources is to use an expert system such as the Amazon Inspector. And what that is, it's an automated security assessment service. So instead of having a team of people going through your AWS infrastructure and identifying any weaknesses or opportunities within that, the Amazon Inspector can do that automatically for you. And that allows you to reduce the costs and increases the efficiency of conducting security assessments and maintaining compliance with any third-party compliance programs. The pricing starts at 30 cents per agent assessment per month. But if you're using it quite a bit, you can take advantage of volume discounting, and that will allow you to achieve as low as 5 cents per agent assessment per month. So the Amazon Inspector, a great service to really identify any critical areas within your infrastructure and also any areas of opportunity, not only in security, but also in performance as well. The AWS compliance program covers a very broad range of certifications, laws and regulations, and frameworks that AWS is compliant with or can help you to become compliant with. For example, there we've got ISO 9000, we've got the payment card industry data security standard as well that AWS is compliant with. We've got the HIPAA standard there that AWS can help you to become compliant with as well. One thing that you need to understand is that AWS may be compliant with a standard, or it may be providing a compliance enabling service that can enable you to be compliant with a standard. A good example of that for a compliance service would be PCI DSS Level 1. AWS is compliant with that standard. ISO 9001, again, AWS is fully compliant with that standard as well. Another compliance enabling service that AWS provides is for the HIPAA standard. And the reason that AWS cannot provide you with a HIPAA certification as such is because the HIPAA standard goes into much more than just your back-end services. For example, you may have a HIPAA application, some software that you have developed, and that is running on AWS, and the AWS side of things is completely compliant, but your actual software may have issues and it may not be compliant. And so from that perspective, AWS has provided everything that they can for you to enable compliance, but you still need to do your end of it to get that HIPAA certification. AWS Artifact is a central resource for compliance-related information on AWS. It provides on-demand access to AWS's security and compliance reports and also selected online agreements. Some of the reports that you can download include SOC or PCI reports. And those are accessed quite simply by going to the AWS Management Console and selecting the report that you want, or searching for that report and then selecting it and then downloading that report. Okay, so when you go to the Management Console and select AWS Artifact, you can go to the Report section. You can search on a report. And so here we are searching for the PCI reports, and we can see there that we've got one, a PCI Attestation of Compliance, or AOC report. We simply select that and we download that report. When we click on download report, it will actually not download the report itself, but it will download the non-disclosure agreement for AWS Artifact. And attached to that, if you open it in Adobe Acrobat and you click on the paperclip, you can see that attached to that will be the reports that you want. And by clicking on those links, you will be able to see those reports and download those or print them out or do whatever you want with those. It is one thing to be compliant with a standard at a point in time, and it's another thing to be able to maintain compliance with that standard when your infrastructure is changing and your software is being updated. And so that's where AWS Config comes in. And what it is, it's a configuration management service running on AWS and allows you to assess, audit, and evaluate the configurations of your AWS resources. It achieves this by continuously monitoring and recording any changes in your configuration on AWS based on pre-built rules. Now, those rules are supplied by AWS, but you can modify those to suit you as well. Those rules can be applied to both network and software configurations. So if you do an update to software and that change is something to do with compliance based on those rules, then that will you will be alerted to that change. Multiple rules can be organized into a conformance pack to better organize these rules. And any changes that appear can be identified quickly by simply going to the AWS Management Console and going to the Cloud Governance dashboard and seeing those changes. It has multi-account and multi-region data integration. And so you can apply this across multiple accounts, across multiple regions. It is integrated with AWS organizations, so you can set up a conformance pack and apply that to all of your accounts within your organization. There are a number of different support plans available from AWS to help you out when you get into trouble. That consists of basic, developer, business, and the top of the line there is enterprise. And they vary from free, and that is purely and simply customer service only. There's no technical service. So if you've got a problem with your billing, for example, then you can get free support on that. But if you want to get technical support, then you're going to have to pay for that. And so developer is the base of that support plan for pay plans. And that's going to give you up to 12 hours response to critical failures, working up to enterprise, which is 24/7 technical support from a senior engineer. And that will have response to less than 15 minutes to any critical failures. From my experience personally with AWS support is that these response times that they quote, for the most part, they do deliver on, but quite often they don't deliver on. So again, if you've got an enterprise there and it's saying less than 15 minutes response, it may take them a lot longer than 15 minutes to actually sort out your problem. But it is a very good service to pay for. And certainly if you're part of a large organization, you certainly should have, at the very least, a business support plan. If you want to get more details about these support plans, go to the AWS website /premium support /compare-plans. If you have a difficult application that you're trying to deploy on AWS, you may want to consider using the AWS Professional Service, and they are a global team of AWS experts. They work as a collaboration between the client and an AWS partner network or an APN partner and the AWS Professional Services team. So if you've got this large application that you want to deploy, then you would engage an APN partner, and then the APN partner would work with the AWS Professional Services team to sort out all of those issues for you. The professional services use a number of different offerings that use a unique methodology based on Amazon's internal best practices, and they help you to complete your projects faster and more reliably. The professional services can provide experts in a specific area of AWS, and they have global specialty practices that can support your efforts in focused areas of the enterprise cloud computing. For example, you might want to obtain the services of a machine learning expert or an Internet of Things or a specific database expert, and AWS professional services can make that happen for you. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our discussion on cloud economics and how to present a business case for moving over to AWS. I hope you've got a lot out of it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.